My name is Morgan Reed, and the exact second my husband realized I wasn't the woman he could lie to anymore happened at my mother-in-law's New Year's dinner under her crystal chandelier when he raised his glass and announced, to my wife, who's finally agreed to step aside so Sloane and I can take the company to the next level. People clapped. Sloane Mercer, his business partner, smiled like a magazine cover and rested her hand on his arm like it belonged there. And I smiled too, because in my clutch, under the table, my phone was already recording, and the board chair of Jason's company had just texted me one sentence that made my pulse go perfectly calm. We have enough. Security is on standby. Jason leaned toward me, teeth still showing for the room, and whispered, "Be smart. Don't embarrass yourself tonight." So I lifted my own glass, steady, sweet, and said clearly, for everyone to hear, "Jason, I'm not stepping aside. I'm stepping forward, and you're about to learn what receipts sound like." 2 months earlier, I would have told you my life looked like a clean American success story. 35, Austin, Texas. A small company I built from scratch that actually paid my bills, paid my employees, and still left enough for weekend brunch and overpriced dog toys. A husband who wore tailored suits and talked about strategic partnerships like they were love languages. A kitchen island we argued over when we renovated. Mine had to be marble. His had to be durable, because Jason always cared about appearances and control in equal measure. If you looked at our Christmas card, you'd think we were happy. If you listened to Jason at parties, you'd think we were unstoppable. And if you asked me, I would have said, "We're busy, but good." Because women like me are trained to translate exhaustion into pride. But the truth was this: I built a business. Jason built a narrative. And eventually, he started sleeping with someone who believed his narrative more than she believed in reality. I didn't catch the affair the way people imagine: lipstick on a collar, perfume, a secret text popping up at the wrong time. I caught it the way you catch most betrayals in 2026, through patterns. Jason started working late, on Wednesdays, always Wednesdays. Like cheating needed a calendar invite. He started showering the second he got home, even if he just sat at a desk all day. He stopped asking about my company, unless it benefited him. And the biggest change? He stopped looking at me like a partner, and started looking at me like a barrier, like I was something between him and the life he felt entitled to. I'm not naive. I'm a founder. I negotiate contracts with men who think women are decoration. I sit in conference rooms where people talk over me, until I speak like a blade. I know how lies move, how they slip into spaces that are too tired to fight. So when my instincts started tapping the glass inside my ribs, I didn't ignore them. I watched. I listened. And I started keeping receipts. It began with a small thing. Jason left his laptop open on our dining table one Sunday morning. He was in the backyard, fixing the sprinkler, which meant he was calling someone else while pretending to do chores. I walked by with my coffee, glanced at the screen, and saw an email subject line that didn't belong in his job. "Miss you. Wednesday? No client sends that." I didn't touch the laptop. I didn't slam it shut. I didn't go outside and scream. I did what I've learnt to do when something is wrong, but not yet proven. I acted normal until I could act lethal. I went to the kitchen, fed my dog, washed a dish that was already clean, and let my brain start mapping. Wednesday, a woman. And the fact that my husband, my very image-obsessed husband, was careless enough to leave that on the screen meant he didn't think I was dangerous. He thought I was the kind of woman who cried in private and forgave in public. I used to be, but my company had burned that out of me. I waited until he came back inside. Damp hair, fake sweat, on his forehead. He kissed my cheek. "You okay? You look quiet." "I'm just thinking about Q1, I said. "You know, stress." He smiled like he loved me, like he admired my ambition. "Yeah," he said. "You and your spreadsheets." He didn't know my spreadsheets were about to become his worst enemy. That week, I started paying attention to money. Not because I'm greedy, because I'm disciplined. My company is called Redwood Route, a logistics optimization platform for mid-size retailers. Nothing sexy, nothing flashy, just software that saves companies enough money that they stop caring if the founder has perfect hair. I didn't build Redwood Route with investor handouts and champagne networking parties. I built it with late nights, cold coffee, and the kind of stubbornness you only develop when you've been underestimated your whole life. Jason loved that story. when it made him look like the husband of a boss woman. He loved it less when he realized I owned something he couldn't control. The week after the email, I noticed something strange in our shared finances. A transfer I didn't recognize. $18,000. The memo said, consulting, but I knew Jason's consulting invoices. I knew the clients. I knew the names. This wasn't one of them. So I asked him, casually, on purpose. We were in the kitchen, Sunday night, meal prep containers lined up like a Pinterest lie. Hey, I said, cutting bell peppers. What was that consulting transfer last week? Jason didn't even look up. Oh, that. Just a bonus thing. I'm helping with a merger. Which client? He paused half a beat too long, then said, you wouldn't know them. It's through Sloane. Sloane. There it was. He said her name like it was normal. Like I'd been hearing it for years. Like she was a co-worker, not a threat. I'd met Sloane Mercer twice. Once at a tech conference in Dallas, where Jason's company Hartwell Capital Partners was presenting themselves as innovative, which is what middle-aged men call themselves when they buy younger companies and take credit. Sloane was the new partner everyone was talking about. Early 40s, blonde in a controlled, expensive way. The kind of woman who wore white and somehow never spilled anything. She'd shaken my hand and said, oh, I've heard so much about you. Jason's always impressed by your hustle. Hustle, the word people use when they want to compliment you without respecting you. The second time was at a charity gala. Jason's mother's favourite environment. Wealthy people pretending to be kind while judging your shoes. Sloane had smiled at me and said, you must be exhausted. Building a company and keeping a marriage alive? That's a lot. And I remember thinking, why does she sound like she's already describing it in past tense? Now her name was attached to an $18,000 mystery transfer. I kept my face neutral. Okay, I said. Just curious. Jason relaxed immediately, like he'd passed a test. And I realized something that made my stomach tighten. He wasn't worried about my anger. He was worried about my questions. That's the kind of man who can survive tears, but not documentation. Over the next week, I didn't accuse. I investigated. I hired a private forensic accountant quietly through a friend who owed me a favor from a software deal. Her name was Dana Lynn, and she had the kind of calm voice that makes you feel like chaos is a solvable puzzle. When I met her in a small coffee shop off South Congress, I slid my laptop across the table and said, I think my husband is lying to me, and I think the lie involves money. Dana didn't flinch. She just asked, personal, business, or both? I swallowed. Probably both. She nodded. Then we treat it like both. Give me access to whatever you can legally access, and don't confront him until we know what we're actually dealing with. I exhaled, because something about her phrasing what we're actually dealing with made me feel less crazy. That's what betrayal does. It tries to make you feel like your instincts are paranoia, like your discomfort is drama. Dana made it sound like math, and math doesn't care about gaslighting. That night, I started pulling statements. Not just joint accounts, everything. Because here's the ugly truth about marriage in America. Love is emotional, but the damage is financial. I found the transfers first. Small ones at the beginning. $2,000, $3,000, $500. Always with vague memos. Consulting, travel, vendor reimbursement. Then, bigger ones. $12,000, $18,000, $25,000. All routed through an LLC I didn't recognize. SM Meridian Solutions. I looked it up. It was registered in Texas 3 months ago. The registered agent? A law office in Dallas that specializes in corporate shielding. My pulse went steady again. Not because I wasn't hurt, because hurt is what you feel when you still hope it's an accident. This wasn't an accident. This was structure. While Dana worked, I paid attention to Jason's behavior like it was data. He started making comments about my company that sounded supportive, but weren't. You know, he said one night, you've done amazing, babe. But at some point, you have to think bigger. Maybe it's time to sell. I looked up from my laptop. Sell to who? He shrugged. There are options. Hardwell could acquire you. Or we could bring in new leadership. We're my company, my name, on every early contract. My product roadmap scribbled on sticky notes while he slept. And he said, we, like he was entitled to it by proximity. I kept my voice light. I'm not selling. Jason's smile tightened. Everything has a price. Not everything, I said. He laughed like I was cute, but his eyes didn't laugh. A week later, Dana called me. Do you want the bad news first? Or the worst news? I sat on my couch. My dog pressed against my leg, like he could sense my tension. Bad, I said. Jason's been funneling money out of your joint account into SM Meridian Solutions. That LLC is connected to Sloan Mercer. My throat went dry. Okay. Worse? Dana's voice sharpened slightly. He's also been using your company's vendor payment system to route consulting fees. It's not massive compared to your revenue, but it's consistent, and it's structured to look like legitimate subcontracting. My hands went cold. How? I whispered. He doesn't have access. Dana cut in gently. He does if he has your saved credentials, or if he has access to your devices, or if he convinced someone on your team it was authorized. My stomach dropped, because Jason had always had opinions about security. He'd always insisted my phone should be on the family plan he managed. He'd always asked for my passwords, in case of emergencies. He'd always acted like he was being protective. And now I realized protection was just another word for control. I swallowed hard. How much? Dana exhaled. From Redwood Route? Rough estimate. Around $92,000 over 4 months. My chest tightened so fast, I had to put my hand over my sternum. $92,000 isn't bankruptcy for my company, but it's not nothing. It's 2 employee salaries. It's product development. It's trust. And the fact that he took it without asking, without even flinching, told me everything about how he saw me, not as a wife, as a resource. Dana continued. There's more. Jason appears to be positioning a narrative that your company is unstable. He's been emailing Hartwell's internal team, suggesting Redwood Route needs strategic guidance and that he can facilitate an acquisition. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Dana's voice stayed even. Morgan, this isn't just an affair. It's a takeover attempt. There's a moment when your whole marriage rewrites itself in your head. Every late night becomes a meeting. Every "we should merge finances" becomes a trap. Every compliment becomes a cover. I stared at the wall across from me and felt my eyes sting. But the tears didn't fall. Not yet, because something else came first. A clean, quiet fury. I asked Dana, do we have proof? Yes, she said. But you need a lawyer. 2, actually. Family law and business law. And you need to stop giving him time to prepare. That night, Jason came home smelling like hotel soap. He kissed me. He asked about my day. He looked at me like I was a lamp in a room he owned. And I smiled and said, long, but good. Then I went to bed beside him, stared at the ceiling, and made a decision so clear, it felt like a vow. I'm not going to catch him. I'm going to corner him. The next 2 weeks became my secret second job. I hired a divorce attorney first, Marisol Chen, recommended by a founder friend who'd survived a messy split with a manipulative spouse. Marisol didn't waste time with sympathy. She gave me strategy. Do you have a prenup? She asked. Yes, I said. Jason insisted. He said it was smart. Marisol nodded like she'd heard that line 1,000 times. It can still protect you, but we need to move carefully. Asset freezes, temporary orders, and documentation. Lots of it. I swallowed. He's been stealing from my company. Marisol's eyes sharpened. Then we involved the business attorney and potentially law enforcement. But first, we locked down your access and your narrative. The phrase that hit me hardest was your narrative, because that's what Jason was really stealing. Not just money, the story of who I was. The next day, I met with a business attorney, Caleb Stiles, who looked like he'd been born wearing a suit and had the cold patience of someone who enjoys destroying sloppy criminals. He listened to Dana's preliminary report, then said, he's exposed, but we need to make sure you are protected from blowback. I want a full audit trail, and I want your internal access locked down today. So I went into my office, my real office, not the home one Jason wandered through like it belonged to him. And I did something I should have done years ago. I treated my marriage like it wasn't part of my security system. I changed every password. I removed saved credentials. I implemented 2-factor authentication for everything. I met with my finance lead, Tanya, and told her, calmly, we've had unauthorized payments. I need you to run a report and lock any new vendors until I approve them in writing. Tanya's eyes widened. Is this private? I said. But urgent. She nodded immediately, because Tanya is the kind of woman who doesn't need gossip to take something seriously. That night, Jason tried to log into something. I knew because my phone alerted me. Unrecognized login attempt. He didn't say anything. He just got quiet. Then, 2 days later, he said casually over dinner, "Hey, did you change the Wi-Fi password?" I kept chewing. Yeah, it was time. Security. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Smart, he said. You're getting paranoid lately. Paranoid. Another classic. I put my fork down gently. Jason, if you ever call me paranoid again, make sure you're ready for me to prove you wrong. He blinked, surprised by my tone. I'm kidding. I'm not, I said. Then I went back to eating like my heart wasn't hammering. Because here's the truth. I was scared. Not of losing him, of what he might do when he realized he was losing control. Men like Jason don't panic when they cheat. They panic when you stop being easy to manage. That's why I didn't confront him alone at home. I waited. I built my case. And I chose my battlefield. Jason's mother, Diane Reed, hosts New Year's dinner every year in Dallas, like it's a social obligation handed down by God. Crystal glasses, matching place cards, a champagne toast. She rehearses. She likes to believe her family is polished, successful, and most importantly untouchable. Jason learned his obsession with image at her table, so I decided that's where his image would die. Not with screaming, not with a thrown plate, with proof. A week before New Year's, Jason told me, "Mum wants you there early. She's doing a big toast, and Sloane will be there." I paused mid-email. "Sloane is coming to your mother's dinner?" Jason's face didn't even flinch. "She's like family now. She and I are building something important." My chest tightened, but my voice stayed smooth. "Great," I said. "I can't wait." Jason smiled, relieved. He still thought I was manageable. He still thought my politeness meant weakness. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Marisol filed for divorce quietly, so the paperwork was ready. Kayla prepared emergency motions to freeze certain accounts. Dana completed her audit and packaged it into a neat, horrifying report. And I reached out to the one person who could end Jason faster than any emotional confrontation. The board chair of Hartwell Capital Partners, Gordon Hale. Gordon wasn't my friend. He wasn't kind, but he loved one thing more than anything: protecting his company from scandal. I requested a confidential meeting under the guise of a vendor partnership concern. When I walked into Hartwell's sleek glass office in downtown Austin, I felt like I was walking into the place where men like Jason worship power. Gordon looked me up and down like I was a line item. "You have 10 minutes, he said. I slid Dana's report across the table. "Jason Reed is funneling money to a shell company connected to Sloane Mercer," I said. "He's also been routing payments through my company's systems and positioning an acquisition attempt based on misinformation he's manufacturing." Gordon's face didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "That's a serious accusation," he said. "It's not an accusation," I replied. "It's documentation. Receipts. Dates. Account numbers." I watched his hand as he flipped pages. The room went quiet in the way it does when a powerful man realizes the problem isn't hypothetical. After 2 minutes, Gordon looked up and said, "Why are you bringing this to me instead of the police?" I held his gaze. "Because you're about to be dragged into it, whether you like it or not. I'm giving you the chance to handle it cleanly, quietly, professionally." Gordon exhaled slowly. "Do you have proof of the affair?" he asked. I blinked once. Yes. He nodded like that mattered, not because he cared about marriage, but because it proved motive. He tapped the report. "Leave this with me." "I will," I said. "But understand this. I'm not negotiating my company. I'm protecting it. And I will go public if Jason tries to smear me." Gordon's mouth tightened. "We don't like public." "Neither do I said. "But I like theft less." He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "We'll investigate immediately." When I left that office, my knees felt weak, not because I doubted myself, because I realized I was officially at war with the man I once trusted with my life. And war makes you lonely. New Year's Eve arrived cold and bright in Dallas. The kind of Texas winter where the air is sharp but the sun still makes you squint. Jason and I drove to his mother's house in silence. He kept checking his phone, smiling at it sometimes. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Diane's house looked like a catalogue cover. White lights wrapped around perfectly trimmed hedges. Wreaths that probably cost more than my first car. A driveway lined with luxury SUVs. Inside, the scent of cinnamon and expensive candles hit me immediately. Diane swooped in, wearing a red dress and pearls like she was starring in her own movie. "Morgan," she sang, kissing the air near my cheek. "You look lovely." "Jason, sweetheart Sloane's already here." Sloane, already here, in my mother-in-law's home, like she belonged. I walked into the living room and found her by the fireplace, laughing with Diane like they'd been best friends for years. Sloane turned, saw me, and her smile widened just a fraction too much. "Morgan," she said warmly. "Happy New Year." I smiled back, controlled. "Sloane." Jason appeared beside her instantly, hand at the small of her back for half a second before he remembered himself. It was subtle, but I saw it. The casual ownership, the entitlement, and I felt something in me go cold again. Dinner was a performance. Diane had seated us strategically, Sloane beside Jason, of course, and me on Jason's other side like an inconvenient placeholder. Jason's father, Richard, talked about golf. Diane talked about legacy. Sloane talked about expansion. And Jason watched the room like a man who believed he was winning. Et Eliu, für apem, Diane klingt hagles. "Everyone," she said brightly. "Before midnight, Jason wants to share something exciting." My stomach didn't twist this time, because I knew. Jason stood, straightened his jacket, and smiled like a politician. He lifted his glass. "To family," he began. "To partnership. To new beginnings." He looked at Diane. "Mom, thank you for always believing in me." Diane preened. He looked at Sloane. "And to Sloane, my partner in business. And in vision. Together, we're building something that will outlast all of us." Sloane's eyes glittered. Then Jason looked at me, and his smile sharpened into something almost cruel. "And to my wife, Morgan," he said, "who finally understands that sometimes you have to step aside for something bigger than yourself." There it was, the public humiliation disguised as praise. Diane clapped first. Of course she did. Other relatives joined, confused but obedient. Jason leaned toward me, still smiling, and whispered, "Don't ruin this." Then he said, loud enough for the room, "Morgan has agreed that Redwood Root will be folded into Hartwell's portfolio under my leadership so we can scale it properly. My company, my life, announced like a donation." I set my fork down. I felt every eye turn toward me. The relatives, the friends, the people Diane invited for the audience. Sloane's hand rested lightly on Jason's arm, like she was holding a prize. Jason's eyes dared me to behave. So I stood, and I smiled. "Thank you, Jason," I said sweetly. That was such a confident speech. Jason relaxed slightly, like he thought he'd won. Then I lifted my phone. "I actually have a toast too," I said. "To clarity." Diane's smile faltered. "Morgan?" I tapped my screen, and the audio filled the room. Jason's voice recorded from a week earlier, when he didn't know I had a device on the kitchen counter. "Sloane, don't worry. She's so busy with her little company she won't notice. And even if she does, she'll never go public. She's terrified of looking like a failure." A few people gasped. Jason's face went white. Sloane's smile froze like a cracked mask. I didn't stop it there. I swiped to the next recording one Dana had helped me legally obtain through proper channels, with my attorney's guidance, because I wasn't about to commit a crime while exposing one. Jason again. "We can route it through Meridian. She won't check vendor numbers. And if we push the narrative that her platform is unstable, Hartwell can acquire it for cheap. Then it's ours. Not it's mine. Ours. Because Sloane wasn't just his affair partner. She was his accomplice." The room shifted in real time. People stopped clapping. Diane's face tightened into panic. Jason lunged toward me, voice low and furious. "Turn it off!" I stepped back, still smiling. "Oh, I will," I said. After the final part, I looked toward the doorway, because that's when the front door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped in with calm authority. Not police in flashing lights. Security. Corporate. Controlled. Gordon Hale followed him. Yes, Gordon Hale Hartwell's board chair walked into Diane Reed's living room like a storm in expensive shoes. Diane's mouth dropped open. What is this? Gordon didn't look at her. He looked at Jason. Jason Reed, he said evenly. You're suspended effective immediately. You'll surrender your devices and leave this property. Jason blinked like his brain couldn't compute consequences. You can't, he began. Gordon's eyes didn't move. We can. And we are. Jason's voice rose. This is a private family dinner. Gordon glanced at me briefly, just enough to acknowledge the source of the evidence, then back to Jason. You made it corporate when you committed corporate fraud, he said. And you made it public when you tried to leverage a marriage as a business asset. Sloane stood, voice tight. Gordon, this is ridiculous. Gordon's gaze cut to her like a blade. Sloane Mercer, he said, you will also surrender your devices. Our compliance team is investigating SM Meridian Solutions. If you obstruct, we escalate. Sloane's face drained. Diane finally found her voice high, furious. How dare you bring this into my home? I turned to her then. This was the part I'd been waiting for. Diane, I said, calm. Your home is where my husband thought he could humiliate me safely. So yes, I brought the truth here, because this is where he felt protected. Jason's eyes locked on mine. Wild now. You're ruining my life, he hissed. I laughed once short. Cold. No, I said. You ruined it when you decided my trust was a bank account. He stepped toward me like he might grab my arm. And that's when Richard Jason's father, quiet for most of the marriage, finally stood up. Jason, he said sharply. Stop. Jason froze, because for the first time in his life, the room wasn't on his side. I held Jason's gaze and said, clearly, so every person in that chandelier-lit room could hear, you don't get to call me your wife while you use me like a business loan. You don't get to touch my company, my money, or my name, ever again. Jason's voice cracked. Morgan, please, don't, I said, and my voice didn't shake. You don't get to switch into pleading mode, just because the audience changed. Sloane's eyes flashed with hatred. You planned this. I smiled at her. No, Sloane, you planned this. I just read the plan you left all over the paper trail. Jason took a step back, chest heaving. Diane looked at me like I was a disease. You're being vindictive. She spat. I tilted my head. Vindictive is what you call a woman when she refuses to be stolen from politely. Gordon nodded to security. Mr. Reed, the security lead, said calmly, please come with us. Jason's eyes stayed on me as they guided him toward the door. He tried one last line, the one men like him always try when they realize control is gone. This will destroy you too, he said. People will think you couldn't keep your marriage together. I walked closer, just enough that he could hear me without the room. Jason, I whispered. I didn't lose a husband. I removed a parasite. His face twitched. Then he was escorted out through his mother's front door, while her guests stared like they'd just watched a magic trick turn into a crime documentary. The clock hit midnight, while the room was still frozen in shock. No cheers, no kisses, just the quiet sound of consequences arriving. And in that silence, Diane finally understood that her chandelier couldn't protect her son from facts. I didn't stay long after that, because revenge isn't a party, it's closure. I walked to the foyer, grabbed my coat, and Diane tried to stop me. Morgan, she hissed, grabbing my wrist. This is going to be humiliating for us. I looked down at her hand on me, then up into her eyes. For us? I repeated softly. Diane, I was humiliated the moment you seated your son's mistress beside him like I was invisible. Her lips parted in anger. I pulled my wrist free. Happy New Year, I said calmly. Try honesty this year. It's cheaper. Then I left. Outside, the cold air hit my lungs like freedom. In the car, alone, I finally let my face collapse, not into sobbing, into breathing, deep, shaky breaths that felt like my body remembered it deserved oxygen, because I knew what came next wouldn't be dramatic. It would be legal. Jason called me the next morning. I didn't answer. He texted, "We can fix this. Please." Sloane pressured me. I stared at it, and felt something almost like pity. Not for him, for the part of me that used to believe love could fix a man who refuses to be accountable. Marisol filed the divorce papers that same morning. Caleb filed for emergency financial protections. Dana forwarded the full audit to Hartwell's legal team and at my direction to the appropriate authorities for the theft connected to my company. Jason's accounts were frozen within 48 hours. The narrative he tried to build, that I was unstable, emotional, dramatic, collapsed under documentation. Because it's hard to call a woman irrational when she has timestamps. A week later, Jason showed up at my office. Not in a suit, in jeans, no tie, like he thought, casual, would make him look human again. Tanya buzzed me. "There's a man here asking for you. He says he's your husband." I stared at my screen, pulse steady. "Tell him I'm in a meeting," I said. "And if he doesn't leave, call security." 5 minutes later, Jason texted, "You're really doing this? After everything, as if everything meant the life I built while he drained it." That night, he tried again at my house. I saw him through the Ring camera, standing on my porch, like he belonged there. I opened the door, but I didn't step outside. I kept the frame between us like a boundary made of wood and choice. Jason's eyes were red. "Morgan, please, just talk to me." I folded my arms. "Talk." His voice broke. "I made mistakes. Mistakes of forgetting an anniversary," I said. "You committed a strategy." He flinched. "Sloane manipulated me." I laughed softly. "Jason, you're a grown man with an MBA. Don't insult me by pretending you were hypnotized." He swallowed hard. "I loved you." I stared at him. And this was the hardest part, not the anger, not the revenge, the grief. Because some part of him might have loved me in his own twisted way. But love without respect is just possession. "If you loved me," I said quietly, "you wouldn't have tried to sell my life like it was yours." Jason's jaw tightened. "You're enjoying this?" I shook my head. "No, I'm surviving it." He stepped closer. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it." My voice stayed calm. "The only thing I regret is the years I spent translating your selfishness into stress." Jason's eyes flashed. "You think you're so perfect." I leaned slightly forward. "No, I think I'm done being your shield." His hands curled into fists. "You're going to destroy me." I held his gaze, unblinking. "You destroyed yourself," I said. "I just stopped helping you hide it." For a long moment, he looked like he wanted to say something cruel. Then he said, almost childlike, "Where am I supposed to go?" I exhaled. "Jason, that's not my problem anymore." His face fell, and in that moment, I saw the truth. He wasn't devastated because he lost me. He was devastated because he lost the role I played. Protector, cover, resource. I closed the door gently, locked it, and walked back into my quiet house like I was reclaiming it. Over the next month, the fallout became public, not through gossip, but through business channels. Hartwell issued a statement about internal compliance investigations. Jason was terminated. Sloane stepped down. Then a tech blog picked up the rumors. And suddenly my inbox filled with messages. Founders asking if I was okay. Investors sniffing around like sharks. Old acquaintances pretending they cared. And Diane Reed called me twice. I didn't answer. The third time, I did. Not because I wanted closure, because I wanted boundaries. Diane's voice was sharp immediately. "You're proud of yourself." I held the phone away from my ear for a second, then brought it back. "What do you want, Diane?" she hissed. "Jason is devastated." "He should be," I said. Her breath hitched. "You could have handled this privately." I laughed, quiet, humorless. "Diane, your son tried to steal my company and humiliate me publicly. You don't get to request privacy now," she snapped. "You're ruining his future," I said, calmly. "He ruined mine first." A pause. Then her voice went lower, meaner. "No man will want you after this. Men don't marry women who destroy their husbands." I felt my chest tighten, then relax. Because hearing it so clearly, her worldview, made me realize how much I'd been tolerating. "Diane," I said softly, "if a man is scared of me because I won't tolerate theft, that's not a loss. That's a filter." She sputtered. "You're arrogant." "No," I said. "I'm free." Then I hung up. The divorce moved faster than Jason expected because of the prenup he insisted on. It protected my company as separate property. It also had a clause about infidelity. Jason thought contracts were armor. He forgot they cut both ways. In mediation, he tried to charm the room. He wore his reasonable face. He talked about miscommunication and pressure. Marisol let him speak. Then she slid a folder across the table and said, "This is forensic documentation of unauthorized transfers from my client's company. We're not discussing feelings. We're discussing restitution and legal exposure." Jason's lawyer went pale. Jason's face tightened. And for the first time, Jason looked at me with something that resembled fear. Not because he loved me, because he realized I could actually hurt him, where it mattered. His reputation. He leaned toward me in the hallway during a break and hissed, "You're going to regret this." I looked at him and said, quietly, "Jason, the only regret I have is that I ever thought you deserved access to my life." He stared, then muttered, "You'll be alone." I smiled. I'd rather be alone than owned. That was the last personal sentence I ever gave him. Everything after that went through attorneys. Jason ended up agreeing to a settlement that included restitution payments for the money taken from Redwood Root, a signed statement preventing him from publicly disparaging my company, no claim to my business assets, and a quiet, humiliating exit from the life he thought he was entitled to. Sloane tried to contact me once, through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted to clear the air. I didn't respond, because air doesn't need clearing when the truth already suffocated the lie. By spring, Redwood Root had recovered the stolen money through a mix of restitution and legal recovery. We tightened controls. We grew anyway, and in the strangest twist, the scandal that could have destroyed me became proof that I wasn't a founder to play with. Clients respected me more. Investors listened harder. Women in my industry started messaging me privately saying, "How did you stay calm?" The answer was simple. I wasn't calm. I was disciplined. There's a difference. The real ending, the part people don't put on social media, was quiet. One evening, months later, I sat on my back patio in Austin with a glass of iced tea, my dog at my feet, and a sky so wide it felt like permission. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "It's Jason. I just wanted to say, you were right." I stared at it. Then I blocked the number. Not because I was bitter, because closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you. Closure comes from choosing yourself even when you feel the bruise. I went inside, locked my door, and slept like a woman who finally stopped carrying someone else's chaos. And when New Year's came around again, I didn't go to Diane Reed's house. I hosted my own dinner. Small, warm, real. No crystal, chandelier, no performance. Just friends, laughter, and the kind of peace you only earn when you stop letting people confuse love with access. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not men are trash, or never trust anyone. It's this: love is not supposed to cost you your safety, your money, or your identity. And if someone asks you to be smart by staying quiet, they're not protecting you. They're protecting themselves.